Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today is my number 19 team in my 2023 NFL Power Ranking Series. It's the Minnesota Vikings. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe on this video and leave a comment in the comment section below. Now, this Minnesota team, I wasn't high on them last year, and I was a little wrong. I think towards the end of the year, they started to show the team that I kind of thought that they were from the beginning. They got off to a really hot start. To their credit, they were 7-1. They had that big win against Buffalo, that big comeback. Then they had the giant comeback with the Indianapolis Colts, the greatest comeback in like NFL history. So they had a lot of great moments throughout the year. Kevin O'Connell had a really good first year as a head coach implementing his system. This is a team, though, that seems to be in a bit of a transition. They don't have Adam Thielen anymore. They got a rookie receiver, Jordan Addison, to replace him. They got rid of Zadarius Smith. They brought in undrafted free agent Andre Carter. We'll talk about him out of Army. I'm really actually quite high on him. I thought he could have been a day 2 pick. Should have been a day 2 pick. Ended up undrafted. They got rid of Zadarius Smith for nothing, you know? So there's like a double-edged sort of sword on that. Getting rid of Zadarius Smith, getting Andre Carter, getting rid of him, but not really replacing him with much. I understand his contract was gigantic, which really caused, I think, some issues with that trade. They cut Eric Kendricks, so 2 big-time veterans. Patrick Peterson gone as well. He had a career renaissance in that system just a year ago. So there's a lot of turnover at some pretty key positions. They're bringing back almost the entirety of the offensive line. They're going to need some improvements from second-year player Ed Ingram, who is right now the starter. I think there's going to be some competition, though, coming up in training camp that'll prevent that. They cut Dalvin Cook because they couldn't trade him. So they're riding with Alexander Madison and the rookie Dwayne McBride. We'll get to that. I think he's going to have much more of an impact than people might be anticipating at this point in time. TJ Hawkinson is back. He really helped change that offense midway through the season when he came over from Detroit at the trade deadline. Look to see how they use him going forward. So there is some optimism here. I just feel like Kevin O'Connell and the way that they've been maneuvering around with this team, particularly in the last 2 years, that he might be sort of just looking to maybe move on from Kirk Cousins. Does he believe in Kirk Cousins? Is Kirk Cousins just sort of the man of the hour, the best option at the moment? I think there's a real possibility that that is true, and I think that there's a lot riding on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins this season, because I don't know that this is, regardless of how he plays, if this isn't his last year in Minnesota anyway. I think it's quite possible. I think that there's something to be said about the system in particular that Kevin O'Connell is coming from, to be able to then move on from Kirk Cousins, get a cheaper rookie contract or more of like a system quarterback type, and then spend that extra $20 million in cap space in other places, particularly maybe getting some guys in the secondary. We'll talk about that. That seems to be a real weak point on this team, and I think is going to be the ultimate downfall, is all that turnover in the secondary, particularly at the cornerback position. And the interior of the defensive line is looking squishy, kind of. There's a couple of interesting pieces there, but it's just, it's looking... I don't have a lot of optimism in Minnesota. I was wrong last year. Maybe I'll be wrong again this year. But let's start with the grades and the breakdowns. We'll start with the coaching staff like we always do. All right, so this might be a pretty controversial move by me to have this coaching staff ranked 22nd. We'll start with the head coach, Kevin O'Connell, in his second year. They did win 13 games, I believe, last year in his first year as a head coach. They got off to a great start as well. I think they were like 8-9-1 maybe. Which, hey, fantastic start for that team. They definitely overachieved last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he keeps implementing this system. He lost his second best offensive player, Dalvin Cook. So he's going to have to find ways to position Alexander Madison, rookie Dwayne McBride, rookie Jordan Addison trying to find that third receiver. KJ Osborne playing in the slot, but you like running Justin Jefferson in the slot as well. So does Jalen Naylor, who I really like, and end up finding himself on the field a bit more as well. O'Connell got the job because of being associated with Sean McVay, really, at the end of the day. And I don't know if you guys are watching the series Quarterback on Netflix. There seems to be something there. Like, him and Kirk Cousins seem to have a chemistry. I don't know if it's just the way that it's shot, but their chemistry seems to develop over time. I haven't finished the series yet. I've gone through the first 4 episodes. So then they have the offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, who's working hand in hand with O'Connell, sort of like more quality control than anything else. He came in with O'Connell as the offensive coordinator when O'Connell got hired last year. There was just a lot of issues with this offense, even when I think at a talent level they had a lot better guys last year than they're going to have this year. So there's going to be a lot more scheming that's going to have to happen. Kirk Cousins, what is his future there? They have to figure that out. And I don't, in particular, I'm just not a fan of these guys that are coming off of certain coaching trees. I'll say that. I think the Belichick coaching tree is very misleading. I think the McVay one is quickly going to become that as well. Basically, the Kyle Shanahan one, basically, because really outside of Sean McVay, it's not really producing. You can say Kevin O'Connell produced. They won 13 games last year, but what that team did down the stretch, you could see there being, like the way that they were scheming up games on the offensive side of the ball and how it was sort of failing them. Yeah, their defense had some part in that, but the game, you pretty much live and die by your offense and the offensive production and how the offense performs. And when you got, Wes Phillips, does Kevin O'Connell maybe need somebody else? I know Wes Phillips has all this experience. He's a passing game coordinator, a tight ends coach with the Rams. So you just wonder if, when the guy's been a coach for that long and he's sort of just settled in as a position coach for most of his career, if this is a spot where you're going to get a lot out of him. Like, what took so long? And that might be unfair to say, but at the end of the day, yeah, what did take so long? Is just something that, he got promoted? How long is this going to last? Kevin O'Connell also, when you look at what this team did in 2 games in particular, there was the game against Buffalo and the game against the Indianapolis Colts, which 99% of the time those wins are losses, but everything worked out for them. The Bills game, complete fluke. Yeah, we got to call it what it is. The Colts game, to come out in the second half, they played just freer on both sides of the ball, and they took advantage of a worse coaching staff that didn't have a game plan to come out in that half to be able to maintain the lead that they'd built. So 13 wins, maybe closer to 11 in that case most years, which is still a good year, but then you got to look at sort of the strength of schedule issues. They ran into Green Bay at an interesting time. That first game of the year, Christian Watson drops that pass. That's a completely different game if he doesn't. Is that a loss? Did they just benefit from teams? How much benefit did they get from teams shooting themselves in the foot? And then they bring in Brian Flores on the defensive side, who, spent last year, I believe he was a defensive assistant in Pittsburgh for Mike Tomlin after being unceremoniously fired from the Miami Dolphins. But I think that it might have been the right move just because you got there's a certain ceiling maybe that he couldn't reach. It's sort of like with Mike Singletary in San Francisco. Was there just a ceiling on him as a head coach and what he could bring to that team? Now he comes in from Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, and he's bringing sort of more of a. I think he's a better defensive coach than what they're used to having. I think Mike Zimmer was their head coach for a long time, but I don't necessarily count that as a defensive coordinator. He's not really coming in. He's coming into a situation also where he's going to have to make guys overperform. A lot of young guys overperform. There's a lot of turnover happening on this defense in terms of the personnel. And is he coming into a situation? Does he have the confidence level still? Was he just a product of circumstance? I think that there's a lot of that going through this coaching staff. This could also, I've said this about a bunch of coaching staff sort of in this range, they could easily find their way to being top 15 by the end of the year if a couple things change and a couple things go right. There's just so many variables that I can account for in making these rankings, but I think that this coaching staff is sort of emblematic of what the Vikings franchise has been really since Kirk Cousins came in, which is like, you can put a lot of hype behind them. You can have all these high expectations, but at the end of the day, what you get in terms of tangible performance is just mid. Speaking of Kirk Cousins, he comes in, he gets a grade of a 78. It's, I just said it with the coaching staff. He comes in usually with like higher expectations, but lower level performances, at least on a consistency level. He'll have great performances. He'll have great games. But then he'll just not step up to the plate the way that you need a franchise quarterback to step up to the plate. And he's one of those quarterbacks who's just good enough to keep you out of range of being able to take a top level rookie without mortgaging your entire draft future, kind of like what we saw Carolina do to get Bryce Young. Minnesota's almost never going to be in that spot. They're always kind of, I think, going to be hovering. Like, this is sort of their floor, so to speak. I think that with the other improvements happening in their division, that this is a real possibility. They could see this type of regression from last year. I mean, we talked about the games, the Buffalo game where Kirk Cousins blew it. He blew it. And then by fluke, they won. The Colts game, again, they couldn't have been playing worse, and then he got to come out, played a little free, and then the Colts just couldn't respond. They just choked it away. A bunch of that is him not coming out in the second half and playing calmer football, but he wouldn't have been in a position to be able to play with such a screw it attitude if they didn't play so horrifically bad in that first half. Nick Mullins, the backup, I think he's a really solid backup quarterback in the NFL. I think he's been doing it long enough where his role as a backup quarterback, I think he does it very well. We've even seen, again, I'll go back to the series Quarterback that's on Netflix. You can see Nick Mullins acting the way that a backup quarterback, the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL act, is that they throw in these little nuances to the starter to try to elevate the starter and make them better. And you saw that there was instances in the series where you see Nick Mullins actually providing that for Kirk Cousins in really productive ways. And it's not even like, it's like just little things about how to learn the playbook a little bit better, how to understand the terminology a little better. So I really feel vindicated on my ranking of Nick Mullins from watching this series. And then there's Jaron Hall, the rookie who they drafted out of BYU, who I think because he played in BYU and he didn't really blow people away, it hurts the draft stock of those types of quarterbacks. You really have to have strong tools or really high-level performances if you're going to smaller schools at the quarterback position, it seems, these days. You kind of got to go to these top-level schools, and BYU is almost like a step below a lot of these top schools. That doesn't take away from the fact that I think Jaron Hall, who for a while in the draft community was looked at as a day 2 pick, he was sort of hovering around that quarterback 5 quarterback 4 position for a while. I think that he's got a real opportunity to maybe be groomed the way that they're hoping, say, Kellen Mond was before. I think that was pre Kevin O'Connell. It was pre Kevin O'Connell. They got rid of Kellen Mond, but Kellen Mond was almost drafted in the 3rd round as a way to set up a quarterback to replace Kirk Cousins, because his contract situation is almost, I think it's like year to year, almost like 2 years at a time that he's been doing his contracts with Minnesota. Really, really smart businessman, this Kirk Cousins. But I think Jaren Hall's got a real opportunity to sort of settle in, sit in a quarterback room, have no pressure on him to get a chance to learn, and then might have a real opportunity, kind of like what we were seeing with Sam Howell in Washington, where Washington was too good to really be going and getting a top 3 quarterback. So, you get rid of the big quarterback contract, you go with the young guy and see if you got something there, because you drafted him sort of to fit your scheme in a way anyway. And I think that's what you're going to get with Jaren Hall. Now looking at the running back room, this running back room looked a lot different just about a month ago when they had Dalvin Cook. It was the best running back room in the NFL by my estimation when Dalvin Cook was on this team, because you had Cook, you had Alexander Madison, you had the rookie Dwayne McBride, who has a straight up turnaround hand the ball off running back, might be the best the best first down, second and short running back to come out of the draft. He might really be that guy. His contributions in the passing game will be null and void. That's really where Alexander Madison becomes the true number 1 back on the team. Then you got C.J. Ham, who sort of gets mixed in there, but C.J. Ham wouldn't be on this page if they still had Dalvin Cook. They'd have Dalvin Cook, Madison, and Dwayne McBride, and that would be an absolutely insane running back room. With that said, it's still a good one. It's still a good one. You can put Alexander Madison in there on first down, turn around, hand them the ball. You can do it. You can really do the things with Alexander Madison that you would do with Dwayne McBride as well. I think where Alexander Madison really takes that running back 1 role, and we'll go here, is in the receiving game, where you can throw him the football. He's a much better third down back than Dwayne McBride is. That's something Dwayne McBride really needs to work on coming into the NFL. So he's going to lose all the third down snaps. They'll put in Alexander Madison. If Madison's worked hard on that series, they'll put in Ty Chandler or even C.J. Ham before they're putting in Dwayne McBride. That's just, unless he shows tremendous strides during training camp and during the season, that's his role. Almost will never be that, I don't think, on this team. And Alexander Madison is not as good as Dalvin Cook was on third down. So the running back room, in terms of an overall threat across all 3 downs and across all situations, does take a significant step back, even though it's still, at least from a first and second down perspective, a really good running back room. So I think when this team is getting a lead in games, I think they'll have a real opportunity to be able to maintain those leads still, kind of like what they had before when they had Cook and Madison. I think they lose a little bit, but not enough for me to feel like they've all of a sudden now been put in a position where they might not be able to close out a football game in terms of being able to run the clock out and shorten the game. If they fall behind, I think they've lost significantly in not having Dalvin Cook as an option there for those screen passes, swing passes, even going out there running, some basic routes. I just think that they lost a lot in that. So, you got Madison, who on a lot of teams wouldn't be the number 1 receiving option out of the backfield, wouldn't be like your third down back, even though he's not bad at it. It's really, you would prefer to have maybe somebody else, and maybe Ty Chandler, starts to excel, takes an extra step forward, and he can become more of a traditional receiving back, third down back. But right now, I think it's Madison's job to lose at this point. I think they really, when they signed him and re-signed him, brought him back, and then cut Cook, I think that was a lot of putting the faith in him that he's sort of going to fill the role that Dalvin Cook had filled in years prior. And then Dwayne McBride is going to sort of come in and be the Alexander Madison in the backfield now. So now we're going to go into the receivers and tight ends, and we start with Justin Jefferson, gets a 92, one of the best, if not the best in the business. You can put him outside, you can put him in the slot. I think his role in the slot is just incredibly dangerous. He just fit in so well with this team. And then last year, basically being Cooper Kupp, he completely met all those expectations that people had for him. He didn't have the record-breaking year that Kupp had the year before, but he very much did what people were expecting him to do, which was be an absolute dominant force in this offense. The issue really is that there was no number two to a degree. Adam Thielen had taken a significant step back, his health and whatnot. KJ Osborne sort of was able to step up, but he's more of a slot guy as well, so it's sort of redundant almost at times to have them both on the field. They drafted Jordan Addison, who's a much smaller guy, so I do wonder, I'm sort of looking at, you want to look back at that Rams team that won the Super Bowl, which Kevin O'Connell came from. I guess you're putting Jordan Addison in that Odell Beckham Jr. role. I guess that's how you would do that. And then you got, by my estimation, Jalen Naylor, who you would put in as sort of a third wide receiver and throw him out on the outside. TJ Hawkinson at the tight end position, one of the best tight ends in the league. I think they can really scheme him up, show him a lot of success. He had some really good performances once he came to Minnesota. So I think as like an inside out, like in between the hashes or in between the numbers, I think they're going to have a lot of continued success with Jefferson and Hawkinson. It's, Jordan Addison, I give him a pretty solid grade. He's one of the best wide receivers to come out of the draft. His size does draw some reasons for concern. And so that's going to be something they have to look out for. And then you go to some of the depth pieces here. KJ Osborne is there. Jalen Reagor. There's a lot of guys that they're hoping can sort of break out here. Brandon Powell, more of just a straight up outside guy. Reagor, he did okay once he was getting out there. He made a lot of Reagor mistakes, sort of really established why he shouldn't have been a first round pick. Josh Oliver got paid, and he got paid as sort of being that early down tight end. And Johnny Mundt is sort of the same idea. They have these like versatile tight ends who you can throw out there to block, and that's really important to this offense and this scheme to have those types of guys available. But then Hawkinson sort of is filling that Kittle, Tyler Higbee role in the offense, where you can put him out there. He's going to give you some solid early down work, and then be a real good threat. And I think Josh Oliver and Johnny Mundt are both really like poor man's versions of that. Johnny Mundt's really there because he's worked in this system forever. So he's a really good body to have in there to really help out, make sure everyone's in the right spot. You need guys like that on the roster that are almost like player coaches to a degree in certain position rooms. So now we're going to take a look at the offensive line. We'll start with pass blocking. We got Christian Darrisaw, who last year really established himself as one of the best left tackles in the NFL, really turning into a home run hit. He sort of started his career the same way that Andrew Thomas did with the New York Giants, where you're kind of looking at him like, oh, okay, like the tools are there, you got to clean this up. And then he just came out firing on all cylinders right after that the next year. Tremendous player. He's better in the run game, definitely. He at least showed up really well in the run game last year. But as a pass blocker, he's still top notch. Next to him, you got Ezra Cleveland, who's settled in at that left guard spot quite well. Garrett Bradbury, who is like the middle of the pack center, who I'm surprised didn't get paid just because I think teams will just throw money at certain guys and hope that they can get them over the hump. But him being like the fourth best offensive lineman you have, or third or fourth best offensive lineman you have, you're doing pretty good for yourself. The real issue, like we talked at the top, was Ed Ingram, who is written in as the starter at right guard. He was a second-round pick last year, but he's really got to step up. He's really got to play much better than what he did last year. He's got a great veteran in Brian O'Neill, who's another. He's like a Jack Conklin, where you're going to throw him out there and you got a solid starter who's going to give you good performances throughout the year, consistent performances throughout the year. I don't think he's going to wow you in any way, shape, or form. He's not going to blow your mind, but he's somebody that every team would love to have. And you go to some other depth pieces, and this is where Ed Ingram is in trouble for me, is with Oli Udoh, who I think could easily be the week one starter at right guard. I just think that they invested so much in Ed Ingram, a lot of the draft capital they invested in him. I think that's where his advantage really comes from. But Udoh, in terms of being a pass blocker, he's one of the best, if not arguably the best pass blocker on the entire offensive line. Chris Reed's a really good depth piece on the interior also. I just think that Udoh finds himself in a weird spot where he's played tackle and then he's kind of a guard also. So there's a lot of his ability to be sort of a sixth offensive lineman does have a lot of value to it. I do think that there's going to be some really solid competition between him and Ed Ingram for that right guard spot. And I think in terms of the passing game, Udoh's got Ingram beat by leaps and bounds. So now we take a look at the run blocking, and this is where Christian Darrisaw really shows up, one of the best in the league. And then Ezra Cleveland, really great, one of the better run blocking guards. Even Brian O'Neill takes a step up there. Bradbury takes a step up as well, and even Ed Ingram takes a step up in the run game. They're all much better as a group of five when it comes to run blocking and that type of performance. And this is where Ed Ingram really needs to continue to grow. He needs to continue to develop this aspect of his game, because if he can't, then this is where he's going to lose his starting spot to Udoh, who is comparable to him in terms of the run game. They're very close. Udoh graded out better than Ed Ingram did. So Ed Ingram, when you got a guy like this breathing down your neck, you're on a short leash. And so Udoh being able to step in and play that guard, you might even see a much better offensive line overall. I just think that they feel like Ed Ingram's ceiling is a lot higher, that they could develop Ed Ingram into one of the best interior offensive linemen in the league, kind of like what we saw with Christian Darrisaw last year, where he just had a blow-away performance. So there is something to be said about giving Ed Ingram the benefit of the doubt this year, that now that he's got that rookie year under his belt, he can come out and year in the system under his belt, come out with a better understanding, some better chemistry. He's going to be playing next to the same two guys he was playing next to with Bradbury and O'Neill. So he's got every opportunity to sort of continue to grow with the rest of this offensive line. So just going over a quick position summary here. It's a good offense, a really good offense. I can't take it away from them. Their offense is fantastic. They got the talent in the right places. They can use like one guy here, one guy there. But the worst guy in each position group on their offense that's actually going to be able to see the field is not as bad as a lot of other teams have for guys that are going to see a lot of significant playing time. So you look at a guy like Naylor, like KJ Osborne, Josh Oliver. Those are guys who aren't going to see a lot of significant playing time, but they're actually not even that bad as these like replacement level guys. And even on the offensive line, you still have Oli Udoh, who's going to be able to step up in the event that someone picks up an injury, and he can play the tackle, he can play the guard. So you got really a good opportunity there to not really take significant steps back. And that's why Minnesota comes in. They're my fourth highest graded offense overall. It's close. It is really close between 4 to like 10 or 10, 11, 12. But they're number 4. They have the 7th passing offense and again, you get a great third wide receiver out of this. Maybe Alexander Madison outperforms his receiving back rating. You see a significant step up from Ed Ingram. and you can get this passing offense into the top 5. Same thing with the rushing offense. They're the 6th rushing offense. So they actually did take, losing Dalvin Cook, they were a top 5 rushing offense when they had Dalvin Cook. But without him now, they did take, I think they lost maybe 2 placements. They might have been number 4 before Dalvin Cook was let go. But you still have such quality with the offensive line. You got quality with the scheme. You got quality with the running back room. So there's a lot in terms of overall talent to look forward to with this offense. But what we've seen and what we've experienced over the years, a lot of years, is that the most talented on paper maybe not perform the best. But I think that they've positioned at least this offense to be as successful as possible. It's when you get to the defense and the overall talent level of the defense, you may not be able to overcome just the lack of talent that you have on the defensive side of the ball in some key areas. So let's get to the defense. We'll start with the 2 edge guys. It's Danielle Hunter, who currently is still on the football team as of this recording, and then Marcus Davenport, who they brought over from the New Orleans Saints, who sort of has been an underperformer in New Orleans. He's been good, but I don't think he's been worth what they did to move up to get him. The real issue is going to be on the interior. Kyrios Tonga, Harrison Phillips, your 2 interior guys. You don't have Dalvin Tomlinson anymore. I really expected this team to go out and get one of the top interior defensive linemen, and they just didn't do that. They, in fact, got rid of Zadarius Smith, which does affect their third down pass rush, because Zadarius Smith was the guy that would go in and play that second interior defensive lineman, which really opened up a lot of potential with the pass rush. But they did bring in Andre Carter as a undrafted free agent. I think that he's got a lot of potential on third down. Patrick Jones is sort of just sitting there. He was like a mid depth piece. DJ Wanham in the passing game. He's been given opportunities in the past, hasn't really stepped up to the plate. And then the interior guys, they drafted Jacqueline Roy. I just felt they could have done better investing on the interior defensive line given the circumstances. They did pick up Dean Lowry from the Packers, but I think Packer fans will tell you Vikings fans, Dean Lowry, that was an easy guy to let go of. Green Bay just seems to be really slow about giving up on certain guys, particularly on defense. Look at their defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. So, Dean Lowry will probably see some play in base formations. But on passing downs, he's not. I wouldn't put him as a top 4 interior guy. I'd be more inclined to kick Davenport to like an undersized interior rush guy on third down and let Andre Carter play on the edge than I would play any of these guys, really. Now you look at the D-line against the run, and not really anything good for the edge group here. Hunter is definitely more of a pass rusher than a run defender. They do get a boost from the interior defensive linemen with Phillips and Tonga being better as interior run stuffers. Davenport takes a step back as well as an edge guy on early downs. They don't really have anything in terms of depth either. Patrick Jones kind of is what he is. Andre Carter just isn't a guy you want to play on early downs early, and Wanham a little bit better, but it's still nothing significant. He's still, in my opinion, the 5th edge rusher on this team. You're going to see Patrick Jones the second, Andre Carter the second, I think, finding their way onto the field. Carter hopefully on third downs, and then maybe Patrick Jones on early downs will be more of a depth piece there. And then even looking at the interior, they don't have a damn thing for early downs for interior depth. Jonathan Bullard is the closest thing they got. But it's really a weakness of this football team, and picking up an injury to one of those interior guys that start could be disastrous for at least early down play. Now we go on to their linebackers. I actually really like this linebacker room. It's quietly pretty deep. Brian Asamoah, drafted last year, he's going to come in and be the starter now there. Kendrick's gone. Jordan Hicks always has a spot whenever he's on a football team. to get starters reps. I really like Asamoah though on third down in particular. I think his athleticism, sideline to sideline coverage, zone awareness, he's pretty good. Jordan Hicks is sort of like the jack of all trades linebacker, traditional 3-down linebacker. And their depth is actually quite good as well. Troy Reeder, really like him on passing downs. You got Ivan Pace Jr., they drafted out of Cincinnati, who is a really good run defending linebacker right out the gate. And I think he's got a lot of potential on later downs as well. I think that there's a world, maybe perhaps even next year, where it's Asamoah and Ivan Pace being the number 1 and number 2 linebackers on this roster, getting the most playing time, and they sort of let Jordan Hicks, the veteran, on his way out. Troy Dye hasn't really worked out as a depth piece, but you look at this linebacking group on running downs, Jordan Hicks, this is where he becomes like the number 1 guy for you. This is what really makes him the 3-down linebacker on this team. Asamoah is still good. He takes a little bit of a step back, but I think there's a lot of room for him to develop as well. And when you get a guy like Brian Flores, who's really good at developing linebackers in particular, I think there's a huge advantage to having that as an influence. Even with the depth pieces, there's Ivan Pace Jr. He gets an 81. Him and Jordan Hicks and Brian Asamoah, I think in a base formation, could be 3 linebackers on the field. I think they are playing a 3-4 defense, however, so I think Ivan Pace, at least early on, will see some rotational work on early downs. Troy Dye is like more of a special teams guy, which is where he really gets a lot of his rankings from. Troy Reeder's just not somebody you want to play on early downs. He's that 3rd down linebacker, depth linebacker. Now we're looking at the real disaster of what this team is, and that is the defensive back room. Not a fan of it at all. Their best defensive back coming in for pass coverage at a corner is Mekhi Blackman, who they drafted in the 2nd round out of USC. Quietly had a really great season. Okay, cannot deny that, can't take away from that. But in terms of tools, I don't know how much that's going to translate, but he graded, I think he graded as like a 92 in pass coverage by PFF. So there is something to that. That doesn't just happen by mistake. Guys don't get graded that high by mistake. You know, you can argue with PFF's rankings when you get to guys who are like ranked 78 and then a guy that's ranked 80 and you're like, no, that should be flipped. But when you get a guy who's ranked 92, you know that's not a mistake. You know that's a guy that had a tremendous season. So he comes in and he's coming in, gets drafted in the 2nd round. He's expected to play. He's going to be expected to start here. Then you got Byron Murphy coming over from Arizona, who, from the looks of it, I don't know if he's going to be playing in the slot, which is his best role, which could be a real problem for him. They got Tay Gowan as well. You got Harrison Smith, who's sort of downtrending on his career, still a solid linebacker, I think. And then, there's you got some depth here going on with the safety group. But you take a look at the depth for overall. Andrew Booth, his rookie year was very meh. Same thing with Lewis Seen. There was their 2 top picks last year. You got to have some sort of expectation that Brian Flores is going to come in and figure out a way to get Booth and Seen on the field as much as possible. So I think we'll see a lot of Harrison Smith and Lewis Seen as your safety combos, and I think that Tay Gowan with Andrew Booth, I think they're hoping they can get Andrew Booth up to speed, get him into starters territory, so then that way they can put Byron Murphy as the nickel slot interior corner where he really suits best, and then you just hope Mekhi Blackman can sort of show up. You have a Caleb Evans who they drafted last year, I believe. They got Joejuan Williams, who in the passing game is just meh, but you wanted that guy for hard-nosed early down work, special teams work. Jay Ward was somebody that they drafted as well, sort of like a safety / corner. Looks like he's going to be a corner on this team, though. Doesn't grade out well, though, in the passing game. And then you take a look at the run support, and that's where Blackman takes a significant step back. Byron Murphy takes a step up. I think also you play him in the nickel on those early downs, he'll stick his head in there. He'll make some tackles. He'll make some plays. But overall, just a very run support group here. Even when you get to the depth, Caleb Evans and Joejuan Williams and Cameron Bynum, really good in that sense, but they get a lot of I think they're going to get a lot of their boost from special teams play in particular. But them playing this well on third downs, I think they'll see some playing time in situations where they need to really get the ball back if they fall behind in games. Andrew Booth did play a little bit better as a run defender. I think that's encouraging, to be honest. He fell in the draft apparently because of health concerns, but I think him playing well in the run game, I think you can scheme him up to play outside corner, and then you're hoping at the end of the year he's maybe grading out as a passer, as a pass coverage guy, somewhere in the high 60s, maybe low 70s, and then gain this, and that would really be a significant boost to this overall room. Lewis Seen is just didn't have the year you would hope for, but first year growing pains, you can chalk it up to that. So just running through the positional summaries here. And, I like the linebackers in coverage. I like the linebackers against the run. The safeties against the run, pretty good. My concern is on the interior defensive line, and then even a bit with the edge rushers. If you're going to talk about that front seven. But the real weakness of the team is the cornerback room. I think they might be the only cornerback room. Maybe Arizona's was like this as well. I'd have to look back. But it feels like they're the only ones that I ended up with a overall grade of under 70 for both pass coverage and run support, which is a problem. But, not saying that there isn't a lot of potential there either. I mean, they got Blackman, Ward, Andrew Booth, Lewis Seen, who they've all drafted in the last 2 years. They took 2 this year, 2 last year, so they're slowly trying to rebuild and get the right bodies in there, some young bodies in there, and hopefully scheme them up, coach them up, and raise those ceilings for them and get them to play like high-level players. There's a lot of potential there. It's just potential isn't by the groceries. So you can see their overall defense, very mid, 18th. Their pass defense, 23rd in the league. They get elevated by the linebackers and the edge rushers. But that cornerback room, it's so important. It really drags down that rating. And then in rush and defense, they're 13th. Again, sort of middle of the pack as well. I would say, their pass defense is below average. Their rush defense is above average, and it gives them an overall average defense. Average. And again, they had Zadarius Smith. This defense is ranked higher because they would have gotten somebody who would have been a early down edge, and then it would have upgraded their interior rush as well on passing down. So they would have seen boosts in both aspects here had they kept Zadarius Smith. And then, Eric Kendricks was a huge loss as well. So these guys that they're losing as that are significant pieces from last year drag down a rating that I think many people were like, oh, our defense was this last year. It's like, yeah, well, look at the guys you lost and how you decided to replace them. It's not looking all that great. So going here to the record prediction, I had them going 7-10. There are certainly wins here within the losses, I think, particularly Chicago. I got them losing 2 games to Chicago. I'm losing to the Raiders as well. 2 teams that are ranked lower than them. With that said, they could split the series with Chicago. They could sweep it. They could easily finish as a above 500 team. There's just something about that Bears team and them being on the upward swing, and the Vikings just feeling like they're stagnant at best. That they're not. They're certainly not better than they were last year. So there is a bit of like your division is escaping you a little bit. I think that they are better off than Green Bay, which is I have them sweeping Green Bay. I'm splitting with Detroit. I think that they can match up well against Detroit. I think that Chicago, with their ability to run the football, really shorten games up, and allowing them to then play aggressively on the defensive side could actually hurt a guy like Kirk Cousins in the way that he plays in this offense. So that was sort of my MO behind having that being a season sweep. And now just going for a quick summary, 7-10, third in the division, ninth in the conference. So they are still very much in play for the playoffs, even though they are 7-10 by my prediction. The NFC is quite weak. They're 19th in the league. 22nd coaching staff, potentially be top 15, of course. 4th offense, 18th defense. With that defense, depending on how that secondary plays, that pass defense could be worse than the 23rd. But I think being carried by what that front seven brings is going to help them on the back end. And there it is, my number 19 team in my 2023 NFL Power Ranking Series, Deep Dive Series. It's not Power Rankings, it's Deep Dive. The Minnesota Vikings. Make sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future videos. A little bit of a different background than my other ones. Not recording in the basement. This one, maybe the next one as well. So, duties outside of, the personal stuff. So, thanks for coming. I will see you guys with the next video next time. And then there's the playlist, and then there's another video for the series. So, enjoy, and I'll look forward to seeing your comments in the comment section below, even the hater ones. So,